Good morning, good morning. I'm going to make sure everybody can hear me. I'm Leah with LifeQuest. Good to see everybody coming back. I do want to have a couple of announcements. One, we have the flyer of who all's speaking right out the door underneath the as I'm looking at it, the leftmost exit door. We also have a couple of other LifeQuest related flyers, so pick up and participate in things that are going on this month, mostly on October 22nd. So next week we have Dr. Rebecca Glazier. Before I forget, she is the Welfare and Self-Reliance Manager for the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, a unique perspective that we don't often hear at LifeQuest. So she also has a pretty worldly religious view and interfaith perspective from her work as a professor at UALR. So it'll be very interesting, and I hope you give her your attention in person and online next week. Today we have Baker Kurrus. Many of you know him, but I'm going to give a super brief introduction. He is an attorney and business consultant in Little Rock, with a multi-layered career that extends beyond the time that we have here today, but he'll tell you a little bit more about himself, I hope. He has served on the Little Rock School Board, all in addition to his legal work, for 12 years, and then as superintendent of the Little Rock School District in 2015 to 2016. He ran for mayor of Little Rock. He was born in Pine Bluff, grew up in Little Rock and Hot Springs, graduating from Lakeside High School in Hot Springs. He attended University of Arkansas in Fayetteville and then went on to Harvard for law school. He is a lay leader of Asbury United Methodist Church, and since this is an interfaith class, I just overheard him say he married a Presbyterian, is now attending a Methodist church, and has all kinds of experiences in both, I'm sure he'll share with you. I have printed off only 12, but if you'd like more, please let me know in the office. This is an article Mr. Kurrus wrote just last month about the LEARNS Act, about vouchers, and this was in the Arkansas Times. So this is very current, and well, I'll have them back on that table. You can pick them up. He has about 15 or 20 minutes to spend with us in our coffee and conversation time in the foyer outside this classroom, so I hope that you participate in that as well. That's all from me. Thank you for being with us today. Please help me welcome Mr. Kurrus.
Well, thank you very much, Leah, and call me Baker. My friends call me Baker. Call me Baker because we're friends and we're going to be friends. Hi, Trudy. A lot of my friends are here. I'm so pleased that you came. I saw the list of people who are speaking, and we've got a rabbi, we've got a Islamic representative, we've got Church of Latter-day Saints, we've got a couple of other Protestants. It sounds like the beginning of a bad joke. Who walks into a place like this? But anyway, we're going to have a little fun. This stuff is boring. It's boring. I went to law school. I had to sit through this kind of stuff. So we're going to try to spice it up a little bit and at least have a little fun. And I try to do that now more than ever. In today's world, with so much going on and so many things in the news that are really not all that positive, it's just very important that we take a little bit of time, even if we're talking about a very serious subject, and have a little fun with it. So we're going to try to do that. I got up this morning. I woke up this morning, 4 o'clock, fell out of bed. Separation of church and state were running through my head. I didn't know what I might do. I'd have decided to come to Second Press and talk to you. That's what I'm doing. And we might even get the guitar out. I'm threatening to do that. It's sort of a threat more than a promise. If I see anybody going to sleep, I'll wake you up, all right? Well, put a little meat on the bones, though. This is not, hi, Mary Frances. It's one of these deals where we got to have a little something here to go on. So you've probably seen this thrown up on this one way or the other, sometimes thrown up on the floor by the Supreme Court. That's a joke if you think about it. After they've been drinking, they threw that. But that's the part of the First Amendment that makes the big difference. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Those words were very carefully chosen. Most people think Madison wrote those. We know that Jefferson's fingerprints are all over the Constitution. We know that people like Thomas Paine were very influential. And we're going to talk about those folks because I don't think you can understand today's separation of church and state unless you first look at history. You then wonder why these people came over here, starting in really, did you guys know that most of the people that came over to this continent who were not indigenous were indentured when they got here? More than half. Most of those people had been exposed to religion, and what they knew about it was not all that positive. These are common folk. They came over here as an indentured. They got a ride on a boat, and they ended up over here 6 weeks after they left, and they had had a fair dose of religion as they knew it, which was top-down religion, somebody telling them what to do, what to believe, and how to act, and where to pay their taxes. Who were the key players back then when this was written? People of influence, people of power. They looked a lot like me, old white guys. That was kind of a joke. Somebody's going to have to help me when I'll give y'all a cue. Okay, they were old white guys. And that's where they were coming from. But the interesting thing about these old white guys, they were influencers, as we would call them today. They were people of power and wealth and prestige. They had access to printing presses and things like that where they could make influence. Does this remind you a little bit of today? People of influence, people of power, people of money, people of wealth, people with a megaphone. I guess we're back to the future. Well, I got to thinking about this. And it really, I feel a song coming on. Because it was late Saturday night. I was thinking about this. I was thinking about the world that we live in. And I don't see what I'm looking for. I do now. I can sing it a little bit lower, but I'm not going to do it. This is the mark of an unprofessional musician, just if you're following along. But my joke was that I was up late Saturday night worrying about all this stuff, and then, well, I woke up Sunday morning with no way to hold my head that didn't hurt. And the beer I had for breakfast wasn't bad, so I had one more for dessert. Then I fumbled in my closet, threw my clothes and found my cleanest dirty shirt. Then I washed my face and combed what little hair I got left and tumbled out the stairs to meet the day. In a park I saw a daddy with a laughing little girl that he was swinging. And I stopped beside a Sunday school and listened to the songs that they were singing. Then I headed down the street, and somewhere far away a lonely bell was ringing. And a canyon like a disappearing dream of yesterday. Sing along if you know this. On a Sunday morning sidewalk, I'm wishing, Lord, that I was stoned. I don't really do that. 'Cause there's something in a Sunday that makes a body feel alone. And there's nothing short of dying that's half as lonesome as the sound of a sleeping city sidewalk and Sunday morning coming down. And the reason I play that is one, I like Johnny Cash, but there are a lot of people that feel that way. There are a lot of people that feel that way. They feel like this world's not working for them, and Chris Christopherson wrote that, and Johnny Cash made it famous. A lot of people think Johnny Cash sang it, but he didn't. So the phrase separating the church and state, which is on the screen there, really morphed out of a statement that Thomas Jefferson made long after that was written, okay? There's nothing in there that says separation of church and state. Kind of gives you that feeling, but it's really a contradictory set of words when you think about it. Make no law respecting an establishment of religion. That makes sense. You can't have a law that says, we're in England now. Guess who's going to be? We're going to have the Church of England. I want to marry this new girl. I think I'll have my own church. We'll talk about that. But then the second half says, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Those are contradictory statements. You see the play in those statements? Justice Breyer talks about the play in the joints in that amendment. You can look at a thing that somebody might do and say, gosh, that seems to be respecting an establishment of religion, say paying money to a church school. But somebody else might turn around and say, well, that might be true, but you're paying it to other people. You're prohibiting their free exercise. You're punishing them for who they are, what they believe. That's not right either. And we're going to talk about that. You're going to get a dose of that, probably more than you want. Madison and Jefferson said a lot of the similar things after this was written. Madison said, the purpose of separating between church and state is to keep forever from these shores the ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe in blood for centuries. In other words, this wasn't a little afterthought where they think, gosh, that might not be a bad idea. Let's separate these church and state things. No, they said, when you look back at history, going all the way back to Aristotle, there were a whole group of really good thinkers who thought that religion and government didn't really work very well. Here's another good one. Any political system that people believe is sanctioned by the divine order of the cosmos will be much more difficult to even question, much less change. Anytime anybody says, well, you know, this is what God has asked me to do as a matter of governance, when they tell you that, it makes me a little nervous. I think God speaks to us, but I don't know that, and we're going to talk about this too, I don't know that God tells a public servant, it's time to go pass a tax cut. That's what we need right now. A tax cut. That's what we need. Words matter. And I think what's so interesting is when the preamble to the Constitution was recited to me the other day by my 10-year-old grandbaby, and I was so proud of her. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States of America. They don't say anything about a church religion. That wasn't what they wanted to do, a state religion. Let's see what's next. We've got a bunch of these. We've got to get through them. Let's look at history. Aristotle said this, a tyrant must put on the appearance of uncommon devotion to religion. Subjects are less apprehensive of illegal treatment from a ruler whom they consider God-fearing and pious. On the other hand, they do less easily move against him, believing he had the gods on his side. Imagine a president, for example, that wanted to sell Bibles. Who would possibly, that's crazy. A tyrant, no, my politics is showing. We can't do that. Uncommon devotion. Uncommon devotion. That's the critical part there. Constantine, what happened here? Let's see. I don't know why that's kind of up on the screen. We'll just go with Constantine. We're skipping back a little bit. Emperor Constantine ended the persecution of Christians by the Edict of Milan in 1313, the Common Era. This made the Edict of Thessalonica in 3080 CE possible, which made Christianity the official religion of the empire. How did that work out for most people? Have you been to Europe? Have you seen those beautiful chapels, those huge cathedrals? They were paid for by poor people. They were built by poor people, and the people that got the most out of them were rich people. That's my take on that. Again, my politics might be showing. When do you think that that edict was ended. Let's go back and remember the Edict of Thessalonica was 380 CE, which made Christianity the official religion of the empire. And this is no knock on Catholics, but the official Roman Catholic position on secular nation states wasn't changed until 1962. You can't see the rest of that. But up until 1962, the official position of the Catholic Church, this was in one of their second major get-togethers, was changed to say, gosh, maybe secular nation states aren't the way to go. I also made a note. Henry VIII created the Church of England so he could divorce Catherine of Aragon and marry Anne Boleyn. We all know that. Guess what he did a little bit later? He made himself king and supreme head of the church. What a great place to be. It's good to be king, I guess, and it's even better if you can make yourself head of your own church. That would probably violate the spirit of our establishment clause. Would we all agree about that? I think it would, and certainly it would. I mean, but that's the history that is baked into the people who came over here. If you start your analysis of the First Amendment in 1787 or so, you're missing the point. So the Puritans and the Pilgrims. I'm skipping around a little bit, trying to move up. Thomas Paine was born in England. Did y'all know that? He's the pamphleteer, Common Sense. You all familiar with some of that? He said one good schoolmaster is worth more than 100 priests. So he wasn't really all into religion. He was not into organized religion. He said this too, which he takes a shot at just about everybody. All national institutions of churches, whether Jewish, Christian, or Turkish, appear to be, to me, no other than human inventions set up to terrify and enslave mankind and to monopolize power and profit. Wow. I don't guess he was a churchgoer. Just guessing. It is from the Bible that man has learned cruelty, rapine, and murder, for the belief of a cruel God makes a cruel man. Wow, Thomas, that's harsh. That's really harsh. Madison's a little different. He generally believed that governments and religious institutions were good. He was a religious man. He was a churchgoer. But he thought they were better when separated. He defended his position in a number of letters written after the Constitution and Bill of Rights were ratified. And this was a quote I really liked. Remember, this is in 1822. He said, "Religion and government will both exist in greater purity the less they are mixed together." And I know y'all are all sitting here saying, well, Baker, what are you talking about that for? Well, a lot of the people on the Supreme Court, there are 9 of them, talk about the original intent. What did the framers mean when they wrote these things in the Constitution, when they wrote the First Amendment? So you got to look at what they said. If you want to know what they meant, look at what they were thinking, if you want to try to figure out what that amendment really means. I wish I could aim that down a little bit lower. I'm going to get to that case in just a moment. Madison said some other things. Ecclesiastical establishments tend to great ignorance and corruption, all of which facilitate the execution of mischievous projects. He actually said that in 1774. I thought that was interesting. If you want to know what the First Amendment means, he seemed to think that the execution of mischievous projects started with ecclesiastical establishments. Religious freedom is important. I think we all agree about that, do we not? Do you feel imposed upon if your tax money goes to a church that you didn't send it to? Would you feel that way? Yes. Well, what do you think these chaps, these rich old white guys, would think about that? I think I know what they would think. I don't think that would be on their agenda as something good. Even though they're very interested in religious freedom, they're very interested in respecting the establishment. It says not the establishment, it says an establishment. In other words, there's not the establishment, meaning one establishment of one religion. It's an establishment of religion. It's a little different nuance there when you think about it. Those words are powerful words, an establishment. In other words, there could be lots of different things that people could do to establish a religion, not the establishment of a state religion, which is what, of course, they were running from in England. Now, Thomas Paine, again, a pamphleteer, but a very strong advocate and patriot, said a lot of interesting things back then. And a lot of people thought what he said was true. He said, it's from the Bible that man's learned these things I just said. Here's a good one, he said. I've always strenuously supported the right of man to his own opinion, however different that opinion might be to mine. He who denies to another this right makes a slave of himself to his present opinion because he precludes himself the right of changing it. I'm going to skip to a couple of things that I think are again, more interesting to me as a historical statement. Then I want to move into what this amendment really means today and what the courts are telling us that it means, which that's always something different. I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer since 1979. You think I had a full head of hair, I was a handsome man, and this is what I've turned into after practicing law. And I'm the one in the Bible they talk, woe unto ye lawyers, for you laid men with burdens grievous to be borne, but yet touch not a single one of them with even your little finger. That's me, I guess. That's what the Bible says about lawyers. But what is important to think about is that in this case, the people that wrote that were thinking about government intruding into other people's lives. Government pushing them into a particular religion, taking their money and sending it someplace to a church that they didn't want to send it to, because that's what had happened in their lifetimes. And they also knew about religious persecution. I mean, they'd seen that in action. They'd seen all the things. They were students of history. They knew what it was like to be persecuted, even though they might not have experienced that directly themselves. They knew what it was like. I'm going to skip around again. I don't want to. These are some cases that you can't see the top of that are current cases that have taken us to where we are today. I want to take you back to 1971. There was a case called Kurtzman v. Lemon. That used to be the law in the land. It was a very interesting case. And it basically, I won't get into the facts of the case too much, but I will say this. It put forward a three-pronged test of how you determine whether something violates the Establishment Clause or the First Amendment generally, not just the Establishment Clause. It was, and I like the analysis was very helpful if you look at that case. And until recently, our Supreme Court has employed this three-pronged case when they looked at various things that they've looked at. We're going to talk about some specific things that they looked at. One in Columbia, Missouri, where my wife went to college. But the three-pronged test in the Lemon case was, does the law have a secular purpose? Is the law that somebody passes have a purpose that's unrelated to religions, meaning a secular purpose? And we'll talk about that in the context of this Columbia, Missouri case. Is the primary purpose and effect of the law non-religious? That's something they're supposed to look at. And then third, does it avoid excessive entanglement? Even if all those other tests were met, if the law entangles the church with the government, then it should not pass muster and it would be unconstitutional under our First Amendment. The first case that I'm going to talk about thereafter is a case in Columbia, Missouri, where the Missouri legislature passed a law that said, we want to have safe playgrounds in Missouri, and we're going to give grants out to anybody that wants to build a safe playground, except we're not going to give them to churches. We think that's the wrong thing to do, to give our money, state money, to a church for any reason, including a playground. The Missouri Supreme Court agreed with that and said, no, that's okay. We get that. That's violating the Establishment Clause. You're giving money to a church and establishing a church. The Supreme Court decided the opposite way. They said, well, you might be kind of establishing a church, but you're prohibiting their free exercise. Remember those two sides of that coin that we were talking about? They said the free exercise clause means that you can't discriminate against a church. You've got to give them the same money you would give, say, a little public school or a playground of some sort a city might own. Well, that was the first time when we got on the slippery slope, okay? That was a slippery slope. The next couple of cases took us a little bit further down that road until we ended up with the Macon case, which is the current law. It's 2022 case. And it takes us all the way to a point where the Establishment Clause is really not there anymore. the current Supreme Court, with the exception of Justice Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, they have my view of the case. I think they were right. And if you want to go read the Makin case, M-A-K-I-N, if you really want to dig down and grind out on this. But it's a really, really tough case where my classmate, John Roberts, wrote all three of these opinions. He and I shared a bathroom at law school. He's a nice guy. I like him, good friend, in a sense a good friend. I don't keep up with him, and he signed a death warrant on an appeal case I had, then killed my client. So I've got a bone to pick with him about that. But the interesting thing is that the current court looks only at half of the amendment. They don't talk about establishment. They talk about free exercise. They say, gosh, if you want to have a law that allows people to have a tax credit for tuition, then you got to give that to religious schools just like it give it to everybody else. Just because it's a religious school doesn't make any difference. Well, really? It makes a difference to me. It's my tax money. I don't mind it going to a public school where anybody can go, where I can go, you can go, our kids can go, our grandkids can go. But if you say it's going to be our little school, it's going to be our little religion, and we're going to indoctrinate the hell out of them. We're going to talk about the Learns Act, which prohibits indoctrination. But guess what you do? I hope they're indoctrinating my kids at Asbury United Methodist Church. That was why we went there. We wanted to be indoctrinated. But that was my choice. That didn't happen with anybody else's money. It wasn't your choice. It was my choice to do that. And so the current court is not going to be our friend when it comes, if you believe that church and state ought to be separated, it's not going to be our friend. Now, a really great guy that knows a lot of stuff, that he's deceased now, but I want to quote him a little bit. I've got a couple of things that he said here, if I can find them. I've got too much material. Where did I put that? The guy's name is George Carlin. Have y'all ever heard of him? He was a famous guy. Gosh, I hope I didn't leave that somewhere. I know I've got it someplace. Yeah, here we go. He said some things about churches. I think this is important to know, too, because we've been talking about the law, and y'all are all going to get credit in your constitutional law class for what we've done, but I kind of liked a couple of things he said. And it's funny how humorists often hit the nail on the head. George Carlin said this: religion is like a pair of shoes. Find one that fits you, but don't make me wear your shoes. I kind of like that. If churches, he said another thing that a lot of us would agree about, and you would have until you heard me sing. The only good thing ever to come out of a religion was the music. I disagree with that. He also said something that's, again, stupid but funny. I've begun worshiping the sun for a number of reasons. First of all, unlike some of the other gods I could mention, I can see the sun. Some people believe that. Some people go march on faith. The current, as I say, the current state of the law is not going to favor the establishment clause. It's going to favor free exercise of religion. So when you see money going to any institution that's not public, the current court is going to find that that's okay. And you say, well, how can that be? When we know who wrote the law, we know how they felt, and we know that a lot of the justices on the Supreme Court say they ground their decisions on the original intent of the framers. How can this be? Could it possibly be that politics is sneaking into our judicial system? Would that be possible? It's not good. It's not good when that happens. Of course, they're appointed. Guess who appoints Supreme Court justices? The president. They have to be confirmed by the Senate. That matters. It really matters a lot. And none of this is new. Jerry Falwell said that he wanted to end the difference between religion and the state. He wanted churches to run the country, Christian churches to run the country. Those were his words. You remember the moral majority and all that stuff? He got a lot of traction with that. He didn't run for president, but remember who did? Pat Robertson. Y'all remember that stuff? I always wondered why people would follow anybody on television who ended up flying around in a private jet that they bought with money they got from people that were watching television. I mean, that's always kind of bothered me. But then again, my politics is showing. This whole movement, the Christian Broadcasting Network, the 700 Club, the Christian Coalition, the PTL, remember Jim and Tammy Faye? He said his last name was Baker, but he didn't spell it right. He spelled it with 2 Ks. I never understood that either. That whole series of events and those people were well-intentioned, and I bet they brought people to faith. I have no doubt in my mind that people out in the country listened to what they said. They had a product that mattered, that means a lot to all of us, many of us in different contexts, whether we're Jew, Christian, Muslim, or whatever faith. They had a product that people would listen to. This is how you find meaning in your life. This is how you find a sense of purpose. This is how you have a sense of unity with other people. You join together. You know there's a creator of some sort. Let me tell you how it works. And that's not unlike what's said in any church like this. But when they say it sometimes, they say, and don't forget, we're raising money for my private jet. Let's send that in. And don't forget to vote like I tell you how to vote. They didn't believe in the First Amendment, apparently. They didn't see that their mission was to save souls or to make the world a better place. Tikkun Olam, if I get that right, heal the world. All those concepts are found in mainline religions, but they're not found necessarily in government. Government does a lot of talk about that, but when you really grind it down, sometimes it's hard to find. I'm going to check my time because many of y'all, did any of y'all ever read Arkansas Times? I write for them now. And I have a lot to say in there. Some of it is worthwhile, according to some of my friends. Some of it is found to be otherwise. But I was thinking about Jerry Falwell. I've got a song that he reminds me of. Can I play it for you? Do y'all want me to do that? I know I'm boring y'all to tears, so I feel like if I do this, I won't play but one verse, okay? This is it's really not, it's not fair for me to hold him up like this. The name of the song, and again, I'm going to sing it for the late Jerry Falwell, is Friend of the Devil. But that's really kind of harsh, isn't it? Can y'all hear this thing? I lit out of Reno, I was trailed by 20 hounds. Didn't get to sleep last night till the morning came around. Set out running, but I take my time. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before daylight, I just might get some sleep tonight. Ran into the devil and he loaned me 20 bills. Spent the night in Utah in a cave up in the hills. Set out running, but I take my time. Friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before daylight, I just might get some sleep tonight. I got 2 reasons why I cry away each lonely night. The first one's my sweet Anne Marie, and she's my heart's delight. The second one is Prison Babe. The sheriff saw my trail, and if he catches up with me, I'll spend my life in jail. This is funny here. Got a wife in Chino and one in Cherokee. The first one says she's got my child, but it don't look like me. Set out running, but I take my time. The friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before daylight, I just might get some sleep tonight. And I dedicate that to everybody I've been a friend of the devil, but anyway. Enough of this foolishness. We got to get back to work. Are y'all learning anything or having any fun? Okay, we're trying to make this as good as we can. I want to talk to you about the LRDS Act. The LRDS Act is all about vouchers. It's a political thing. It's got I've been in the education system. I sat 12 years on that school board. I went to over 400 school board meetings. And people said I didn't believe in local control. Why do you think I kept running? I wanted local control. And when I went to the school district, I learned so much about the dedicated people who were down there, worked so hard. All they wanted was somebody to just set them free, let them do their jobs, motivate them, energize them, give them some reason to come to work, get off their back, quit telling them from the top down how to run the organization. Listen to people in the school rooms, listen to teachers, listen to principals, and serve them, not the other way around. That's why I don't like the Learners Act. It comes out of a capital from people who don't know anything about education, who didn't talk to a single teacher, didn't talk to a single student, probably didn't talk to a single parent. And they wrap this whole thing around teacher raises, okay? I'm preaching now. I'm in a church. I'm entitled to do that, right? The whole thing, we're going to raise teacher salaries. By George, that's going to be the best thing that ever happened. And I'm all about that. I'm all about that. But I pulled the teacher salary schedule from Forest City. I did this just recently, just to say, okay, that's great. Their teacher salary is $50,000 to start with. Guess what it is after 10 years? $50,400. We kind of have a winner here. I'd give you all the change in my pocket, but I don't have any. I really don't. Let's say you want to go up to Bentonville, where it's kind of happening up there. The starting salary's not $50,000, it's $56,000. $56,000. Stay there 10 years, and that's assuming you don't go get a master's degree or do anything else. You just stick around, you're making $66,000. So this whole idea that we're going to bump teacher pay, and we're going to get people to go to places that are tough, that are harder to teach in, that are difficult places without pro sports like the Razorbacks. Think about that. That was supposed to be kind of funny. It is pro sports now, but I don't understand. If they talk to school superintendents like I do, I still have buddies that are school superintendents. They tell me they can't hire teachers in Marion now. This whole voucher thing was not about improving education. It was not about raising teacher pay. It was not about anything other than taking your money and giving it to private enterprise, private schools, people that want to run private enterprises, people that want to administer programs for vouchers, all that stuff. And let's just, before these last cases, let's just think about it. Does that entangle the state in private schools? Yes. Does it entangle the state in church schools? Yes. And again, I can't blame anybody for taking it. When we passed the lottery, I didn't vote for it. I didn't vote. I'm too good at math. I understand it's a fool's game. It's a tax on people that aren't good at arithmetic. But when my son got eligible for that scholarship, boy, I had my snout in the trough. You know, that's the way it works. It's America. That's the rule. We're going to play by the rules. And everybody's getting vouchers. I predicted it would cost $335 million this coming school year, and I was about right. I predicted that a year ago. Everybody that homeschools is going to get one. Everybody that can afford to, or that has common sense enough to file the application will get one. I don't blame them. That's the game as it's played, but that's why we had that. But I think that entangles the state far too much into people's personal lives and their religion. And I certainly want people to go to private school if that's what they want. I would support every voucher out there if there was any proof whatsoever that they made a difference in education. I just read a study 2 nights ago in Mississippi. They can't tie any voucher to any school improvement. Yet on the front page of the Democrat Gazette, 3 days ago, they talk about the kids that get these vouchers are just doing great. Well, they probably are, but that's not the question. How were they doing before they got the voucher? They were doing great. They were doing great. It's a stupid, then the state pumps that garbage on us and tells us it's warm rain, you know. That ain't warm rain hitting you on the head. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it ain't warm rain. But that's why we as people have to stand up for what our Constitution says and what our Constitution means. And what it means to us is that most of us, at least, we want our government to do the things that they do well. everything I talked about in that preamble to the Constitution. That's what we do. That's what we do well. We build jet airplanes that, fly at Mach 3 and kill people. We're good at that. We're good at certain things, but we're not good at drawing lines. And most people that I quoted today, from Aristotle all the way to kind of not so much George Carlin, I think had it more or less right. So I want to tell you, I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk to you personally, friend to friend, about my experience as a employee of the state, okay? I worked for the school district. I did. I got a check. Actually, an EFT. It went into Jenny's account. I don't know what happened to it. Jenny's here. Would you hold your hand up? And she's here with our good friend, Shelley Keelan. So they're both here, and I appreciate them coming. But I was employed by the state. So I didn't go down there and say to everybody, I'm a proud member of Asbury United Methodist Church. That's where I go to church. I love it out there. The people are friendly. They're kind to me. They take me as I am, and we take everybody as they are, and we all kind of raise our hand when they say, are there any sinners in the room? They don't really ask us that. But I didn't say any of that. Didn't say any of that. Because that wasn't what I was hired to do. I'm paid by the state and the school district, your property tax money, plus a dose of money from the state. And my job was not to go down there and tell them how pious and holy I was, because I'm not, for one thing. But second, even if I were, I wouldn't have told them. My job was to help these kids. And you say, okay, that's interesting, Baker, but what's that got to do with separation of church and state? Well, I'm going to turn the tables right now and tell you there is many ways no separation between what people do and what their beliefs are. What you feel, what you think, what guiding principles that you possess in whatever religion, if you want to call it that, or whatever sense of spirituality you have, whatever sense of caring you have for other people, that impels you to action. There's nothing wrong with that. If you actually believe in a creator, then and creation, which I do that, and I think, gosh, there must have been somebody at work to make this happen. Then you have to understand that those very bedrock beliefs are what impel you to get up in the morning and go try to help your neighbor. So I want to ask the legislature who want to post the 10 Commandments in classrooms, which is totally illegal. I mean, that is so stupid and wrong. Why do they want to post those 10? Again, that's in the Old Testament, which is part of my tradition. But there are other commandments. There are actually 2 sets of 10 Commandments in the Old Testament, but then there's a couple of commandments in the New Testament. One of them is love thy neighbor as yourself. I mean, why don't we post that one? That's kind of doesn't have a whole lot to do with, it's got something to do with religion, but we don't want to put that out there. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That doesn't belong in a public classroom. That belongs in a home. It belongs at the kitchen table. It belongs at your church or your synagogue or it belongs a lot of places. But to me, that's not where it goes down in a public classroom. Now, I hope the teacher in the classroom wants to help people. I don't know what, and most of them do. I love teachers. I love administrators who hated to quit being teachers. If you ever want to figure out if an administrator is going to be any good, if you ever run in the school district, any of y'all plan on being a school superintendent? Probably not. May have some in here, I don't know. But if you're hiring an administrator, ask them, do you miss the classroom? And some of them say, well, I do. I miss it. I miss those screaming kids. I miss the fact that I got to do lunch duty. They don't say that, but that's what you can see that. But the ones that say, man, I miss it like crazy. I love being in the classroom. I don't like being cooped up in my office. I want to go out and I want to be around kids. I want to talk to them. I want to get to know them. I want to see what makes them tick. Well, that's the separation of church and state that I like to hear about. People with belief in something that put that faith into action. And that's what really matters, I think. And I say that's more of a personal thing and not so much about church and state separating. It's the point where in our own heart and our own mind, we rely on whatever we rely on to impel us to do the right thing, to meet others where they are, to help people when we can, to love our neighbor as ourselves. But you don't do that by posting 10 commandments in a classroom and order people in classrooms to stick that on a bulletin board. That's not where it happens. It happens right here. I want to end with a couple of little vignettes about what I see happening next, okay? We've got a Supreme Court that's not going to want to separate church and state. They really don't. They're going to be more than happy to get reelected. They're going to run the politicians that will ultimately elect the people that ultimately place judges in positions of power. Know that they have solid blocks of votes that they can get from the so-called Christian coalition. I don't like that. It makes me nervous, and I like Christians. And it's kind of what Gandhi said at some point. He said, "What do you think about Jesus?" He said, "I like him. I'm just not so sure about the Christians." If people lead with their faith, it makes me a little nervous. And that doesn't mean I don't talk about my faith. If somebody wants to hear about it, I'll be happy to talk about it. I'll be happy to share with you, you with me. We learn from talking to each other about things that matter, and that's part of what matters. But the First Amendment matters. It matters. This country will be dramatically different if we say we're turning over the things that ought to work for everyone to people who only believe a certain thing religiously. That would be antithetical to everybody that wrote those words and everybody that interpreted those words until 2017. And I'm very much opposed to that, and I'm not necessarily trying to persuade you, but I guess I am in one sense. I can't help it as an attorney to try to do that. I had one more song, which I don't think I'm going to sing, but it's a church song or a camp song, and it's emblematic of what I was trying to say. And sometimes songs do better than the poorly chosen words of an aging attorney. I'm not aging. I'm young at heart. Come on, give me a break. You are too. You wouldn't be here. We will know you are. The song is a camp song. We will know you are Christians. I'm not going to say it that way in an ecumenical setting. I'm going to say we will know you are faithful. We will know you are faithful by what you do. That's the upshot of that tune. And that's the way I want to see things go. And I would hope that we have people of faith, people with big hearts, people who love their neighbor, that go forth and serve, but they don't jam their religion down our throat. They don't take our money and pay it to what religious organizations they want it to go to. They let us make those decisions as individuals. And if we can work in that direction, I don't mind asking you to consider doing so. The last thing I'll say is it's been a pleasure. I really value this get-together because I think it's so interesting to see people who are actively learning and want to continue to do so because we're all lifelong learners. So thanks again for letting me be here.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for thanking Mr. Kurrus, Baker.
Yeah, call me Baker.
Call him Baker.